I'm Therese Swenson. I'm here at the Rogue Community Television Studio, which is the Southern Oregon University has a digital media center. So they have students that are journalism students, or they're taking photography or video. They want to learn how to do TV shows. And so they use the editing bays here and they use the studio. But on Saturdays, when they're not in school, we have public access here. So I'd like to encourage you to get involved in public access. We have 20, 30, maybe 40 producers that come in and use the equipment here, where we have a studio, we have editing bays, we have a TriCaster so we can put your name on and that kind of stuff. But if you don't want to be a producer here at the studio, you can also produce shows yourself and turn them in and submit them. I like to encourage you, if you're creative and you go out and you do photography and you've taken pictures, to go ahead and create a stream of pictures and maybe put a dialogue behind it or music and submit it. We have a lot of different categories that we have. This programming block, which is found in Voices. And this is important for you to know because public access television is so important. Our First Amendment, to be able to have a place to have a voice, it's so important for people to get involved in public access. We have a president that's talking about, reducing your access, and it's scary to me. But anyway, there's many different programs here that are for spirit and spirituality. On the weekends, you can have a cooking class with Kamud. You can do meditation. They have sports. Like you may watch a really good, there's the block. The kids might have a really good soccer game where they had some great plays. You might have cut some footage. You can submit your own work, but if you'd like to take classes, starting again after the first of the year, you can come in and learn how to use all of our equipment. You take like 4 weeks of classes, a couple hours a week, and we'll teach you how to use the equipment. Now, you might be interested in only going out and filming things out in the field, we call it, field classes. And we have 4 weeks of those classes as well. We'll teach you how to use a camera, how to collect sound when you're outside, how to mic a person when you're trying to do an on-location segment. And so you can take our class to use our studio, or you can take our class to go out and do field productions. I'd like to invite you to get involved. We are Rogue Valley Community Television. That's RVTV through the university. It's .sou.edu. Please go online and look and see how you can get involved, either to be a public access producer, maybe you want to take classes and learn how to do things. I like to remind everybody, before I have a guest in the studio, but before I put him on, I like to remind people, oftentimes you get the newspaper because you're looking for a car, or your lease is up and you might want to move closer to work, or your sports, there's a team you're following. But I think you should get a newspaper every week. And the reason is not only local news and maybe a few highlights on the politics of today, but there's events and a calendar of events that's in every newspaper, and it tells about all the goings on, not just music events, but like different events that are being hosted by nonprofit organizations here. So if you go to your market of choice across the street here from where our studios, we're kind of at Walker and Webster. We're down here by the new student housing. And there's a market of choice across the street, and they have lots of publications where you can find out what's going on. That you can go to your Chamber of Commerce and get really nice maps to be able to take a Sunday drive. In the old days, we used to go on a Sunday drive. Families would get in the car and end up somewhere. That's a fun thing to do. One of the things I did when I was a teenager, we used to do car rallies. And somebody would plan a rally where you'd go, and sometimes people do it with cards. But we used to just try and make it in a certain amount of time, and then everybody would show up at a pizza parlor or at a community center where you could all join up. But somebody ought to plan a car rally. It's kind of a fun thing to do. But I just want to remind you to get involved in your community. Pick up, even though you've lived here for years, pick up some of these brochures and things that are at your markets. Grab a few of them, look at them while you're at home. Take your family, take your partner, take your best friend. If you have an elder, just take them out for a walk. Go to something happening in town. Be a tourist in your own town. Today in the studio, speaking of this town, we have so many artists in this community. And I have David Nienow in my studio. And David now has taken a lot of the classes that we offer. You've done in the studio to learn how to use the
That's right.
TriCaster.
Yeah, I've done the studio certification class, the field certification class, followed up with all the other classes available for the advanced classes. So
To help you fine tune so
That's
that
right.
you can do it. Now you have been doing some shows. You've got 2 different shows going right now. And I wanted to tell people to watch for you because you're on Thursday and Friday you do a show called Gems of the Rogue Valley.
Yes.
Now the first time you did it, it really was rocks. When you hear
That's
the
right.
word gems.
That's right. Our very first show that we did was the capstone show for a studio certification class that I was in. And so the class decided to do a show on the subject I recommended, which was on the Crater Rock Museum in Central Point.
Oh.
And I've been a member, and I've been a collector of rocks and minerals. And being I was the only rock collector in the class,
You brought them all.
they not only decided to follow up on my subject, but they said, "Well, you can host the show." And I'm going, okay. I wasn't expecting to be in front of the camera when I signed up for the class, but I wound up hosting the show. One of my other classmates was my co-host. That was Cassandra Wass. And then after the show was done, her and I talked about taking that format that we had developed for the capstone show, and we turned it from Gem of the Road Valley to Gems of the Road Valley, so we could focus on a variety of organizations and locations and places and people around the valley doing positive things in the valley, doing fun, entertaining things in the valley. And so we did that through the summer and fall, and we produced 11 episodes this year.
Wow.
For Gems of the Road Valley. And
Now that was a lot of interviewing people,
Yes.
taking people, like they can go back and look at these in the archives.
Yes.
Because it'll make them familiar with South County. Tell
Right.
some of the places
So
in your 11 shows.
We've done shows in addition to the Crater Rock Museum. We did features on the Science Works Museum,
Great.
the Schneider Art Museum. We did shows on Rogue Retreat and the Hope Village Project to bring some exposure to the homeless situation in Jackson County. We did a 2-part show on Fort Vinoy Farms in Grants Pass for all their October Harvest Fest activities that they do. We did the Southern Oregon Historical Society and the Road Valley Genealogy Society.
Now, what's important for people to know, if you're interested in any of the places he just talked about that you might be going, whoa, where did he was talking about Southern Oregon Historical Society? Yeah. Well, if you go to our website, rvtv.sou.edu, and you go up there to the very beginning has a blue banner, and you just push public access. If you go there, you can get to the archive shows like this gentleman has been producing. This particular show he produced is called Gems of the Rogue Valley. So you could type that in the search engine, and up would come all the shows. You could go and watch them. Yeah. He's done 11 this year. Yeah. But he's also done another show. He's been introducing people to the different artists here and the different crafts. And his show is called Rogue Artisans
and Crafters.
And Crafters.
Yep.
And that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yeah. If you look on here, we have Arts and Culture, and it's on our website. You can kind of, if you look on this Voices programming block, you can see when you might see art shows. But when you do that, when you actually interview artists and you show the work they do you actually also show the process of how they make something?
We talk about that during the course of the interview. In some cases, we have video clip or photos of their process. Otherwise, it's just kind of discussion of their process and then showcasing either through video or pictures examples of their work. We try to allow the artist to kind of bring in a few physical samples of their art to decorate the set with. And then we can talk about stories behind the different pieces of art. And talk about their life as an artist and how they got into doing their art, and just kind of doing a general good profile of the individual as an artist and what their life is like.
So now, how many of these shows have you been? You've just started this Rogue Artisans and Crafters.
Yeah. So like this evening, I'm producing my final episodes of the year. It'll be episodes 6 and 7 tonight.
Okay.
So it's pretty new, and it's still kind of in terms of how we format and our stage, our show is still kind of
it's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
Okay, but now just so that people might recognize some of the names, just take a minute and talk about some of the people in the 6 shows you've done.
Well, we started off the show interviewing Yvonne Kitchen, who lives in Talent and who does an incredible bronze sculpture work of horses and other wildlife. She's 80 years old. Her work is featured in Art de Jour Gallery in downtown Medford, and she's done art throughout her whole life, and her bronze work is just incredibly detailed and really incredibly beautiful to look at. And so we started off the show doing a two-part show on her, because she's just such an incredible artist. And then,
did she do Lost Wax, and you showed
yes,
some of that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so we talked about that whole bronze process of her work. And then we did Karen Rychek, who's also in town. She does mosaic art.
Oh.
She's known as Miss Mosaic. And then we did shows around Roy Musatelli, who's another artist featured at the Art de Jour Gallery, who is a photojournalist, photographer, and illustrator. And then and Tim Hallam, who's a young man who does incredible landscape photography. So we interviewed them last weekend, and then tonight I am interviewing Kim Ragsdale, who's a Western artist. She does incredible pencil drawing that is at times it's like detailed, almost like black and white photographs are so detailed.
So now we have a website for you. Do y'all have his website? If you have him up, you can put it under me too.
Well, yeah, I've got to learn about the shows. I have a Facebook page for Gems of the Road Valley.
Okay.
So you can go to Facebook, type in Gems of the Road Valley, and you'll find the page for that show, and you'll find links to all the past episodes we've done this year.
Okay, and then for the artists?
For the Rogue Artisans and Crafters, right now I'm in the process of creating the Facebook page for that show, but that should be up and going here in the next few days. And so then you'll have links to all those episodes on that page.
So now you grew up in this area, so
Yeah.
you pretty much grew up in an area where color and design and art was just part of the community.
Yeah.
So in your own art, you know, you've had different work and you've done web design, but now you had done the last career you were working in photography.
That's right. I used to be I worked for about 10 years. I worked as a web designer, a webmaster, and a photographer for fitness models. And so my work was all glamour, fashion-oriented kinds of work. And then there was, in 2010, some of my clients were kind of in the process of retiring, and then I had a couple of heart attacks, and then my father had a couple of strokes.
So you kind of stepped back a little.
So yeah, kind of circumstances kind of forced me into a retirement mode, and I had to take care of my father for the last 7 years. And
So you went from being a photographer to now being a video photographer.
yeah, you know, I knew that at the end of last year, I knew that my father was going to pass away sometime this year. I knew I had to kind of start to rebuild my life after having been his primary caregiver for 7 years, and so I've known about the public access classes for several years, but never had the time to actually go through them because, you know, I'm caregiving my father full time.
Yeah, and it does take a commitment of
Yeah.
4 weeks in a row.
Yeah, and so going into this year, when the first available studio classes were available, I signed up and went through and got the studio certification, and it's just been ongoing since then.
It's a really fun way to learn. You know, I remember the first class that we did where we all got together, and at the end of the weeks that you're doing the show, you create a show.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where you guys did the gyms one.
Yeah.
My group, we went out, it was a nice day. We did a field certificate class, and we went out and we did farmers markets.
Yes, right.
So we went around and filmed farmers markets. That was kind of fun. And that's where we learned sometimes you have trouble getting sound when you're outside. It's,
Yeah.
you know, there are some tricks to
That's
catching
right.
the sound, or you can do a voiceover or add
Yeah.
voice later.
Yep.
But you've learned a lot because you've actually taken a lot of the fine-tuning classes.
Yes.
So you could actually help people if people were a little intimidated about getting involved. What they need to know is when you take the class, they actually invite you to come on in and work with different producers. So you see how different producers do shows, and you kind of log some hours. Well, you guys might be able to go to his website, Gyms of the RV, and say, hey, David, I want to get involved. Give me some advice, and maybe he could help lead you through this. Or if you want, he can help you film a show because he's a photographer and he knows how to use cameras and things. So if you have something, or maybe you're an artist and you want to get a hold of him, go to his Facebook page, Gyms of the RV. Did we have another, I didn't know if you had another web for him. Like
No, not yet.
Not
So,
yet.
Yeah.
So that's the best way to find you.
Yeah.
And that's GEMS if you're thinking gyms. and it's kind of, instead of being rocks and stones, it's a collection.
Yeah, with gems, you know, we like to give positive exposure to the different organizations and places and people around the valley that are doing fun, positive, educational, entertaining, social-oriented kinds of things. So for next year, I've got a list of around 60 plus show subject ideas to explore. And with any luck, throughout next year, we'll maybe get to a third to half of those, depending upon
Well,
the
it
number of
looks
dates
like
we
you're
get.
doing good to have. You've got shows on Thursday and Friday, which is the Gyms of the Rogue Valley.
Yeah.
And then the Tuesday and Thursday show, which is the Rogue Valley Artisans and Crafters. Yeah. And that, you know, introducing people to the artwork. But, you know, they do have like an art walk. Don't they do like a couple times a year where everybody goes, you get a list and you go to the different...
Yeah, at different times of the year, like the Ashland Art Association, they do art walk kinds of, like on Fridays at different times of the year. They have the Lithia Artisans Fair that starts in the spring and runs through the fall. And then they've got the different winter shows that they do. You know, there's a lot of really wonderful art galleries around the Rogue Valley. And I've lived here in the valley all my life, and I've always just been impressed by the sheer variety of artistic talent that lives here in the valley. And so the with one of my my co-producer and I have, you know, we're talking about the variety of artists around, and we decided to combine forces to create this art show where we're going to profile artists here in Southern Oregon. And so you know, and having gone through the different galleries, I've got a list of about 300 artists that just live in Jackson County.
Okay, so you have a lot of artists.
There's lots of artists to select among to feature and interview on the show.
Well, then we need to talk to them about, some of them might want to just get a hold of you to work with them to help if they do their own thing. Like if you help them go out and do a field production, you could help people get started and then they could help you. I mean, you could work it out that you'd have somebody to help you. But people might want you to just come on location. Like I do understand about bronze casting.
Yeah.
What was the name of that woman?
Yvonne Kitchen.
Yvonne Kitchen. Bronze casting, it's interesting the way you take that wax and you build a box, and it's just so interesting the way you create that art, you know, because you're working kind of in reverse in the beginning.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So that'd be an interesting show to go back and see. So people should go back and look at your shows that you've done, because you've introduced them to a lot of different locations around the area and artists. So, and that's going to be on the arts and culture section of the television programming block. Now, that you've been involved with public access, have you used any of the digital editing here, or do you do all your own work?
Well, it's, you know, the way we do our shows here and with the shows that I produce, there isn't a whole lot of real editing to be done. Once things are set up here in the studio and we start recording, you know, it's a solid block of documented work. So
it's, and that's where you add the pictures and things like we have in the background. You add the artwork that the people have done. So you've been creating these shows and putting them up now for April, so about 6 months. You've done a lot of work if you've done almost 20 shows. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I'm going to end the evening having produced and hosted 18 shows this year.
I am impressed. Now tonight you'll do the show from 6 to 9?
Yep.
So that's interesting. I want to mention something about that. We've had the opportunity to have studio times 9, 12, 3, and 6.
Yes.
And I understand that we really need people to get involved in public access. They're talking about cutting back our show times, and maybe that 6 o'clock one might go away, and or maybe one Saturday. So here we've got a lot of producers. We might need to get people involved to let this studio know how important it is to keep us alive, because you know, public access is so important this day and age. And it's not just to meet artisans or like I like to invite people around my community as well, but it's so important just to be able to have an opportunity for a voice.
Yes.
I'm really worried about what's happening in...
Yeah, you know, when you look at media, modern media, where, you know, all the big national networks are so interconnected and owned by major conglomerate
companies. It's the
companies.
same 6 stories.
Yeah, it's with your public access stations, you have the opportunity to become involved in documenting and telling the stories that are important to you in your local community. And that's an important thing because, you know, when you look at the number of newspapers across the country that are continuing to go out of business and aren't being published anymore, you got communities that are losing a source of local media information that pertains to their local communities. So,
and not everybody uses social media.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you kind of depend on your kids to come home and tell you what's going on, or you depend on over at work over the water cooler, or you know your neighbor over the fence. But really, newspapers really did connect the communities. And that's why I really tell people, buy your local paper. It really does have a lot in it that lets you know what's going on.
Yeah.
You may not have thought you wanted to know it, you know. And also, of course, it's a voice for people to write a letter to the editor. But public access television, I'm concerned that we're losing the airwaves. Oh, do you have a way of explaining to me this net neutrality argument that's happening? Can you explain that to me? And is that a vote that's coming up? What do I hear about that?
Yeah, you know, it's the FCC is trying to change the rules that basically with net neutrality, you're basically trying to guarantee that the providers online of content are guaranteed equal access to the traffic out there online. They're trying to change the rules to where the big online content providers and online gateways that people get onto the internet through, they could potentially place roadblocks that limit access to other places online that when you come through to the internet through their
So you're
service.
talking about Google, and now we hear about other people that provide, and I guess I have a hard time understanding, but it's a platform by which all of us jump on and look
Yes.
for things. But there's more than one platform now.
Yes.
But so when you go to the web, do you really need to ask for a different platform or server, or is that automatic, or?
Yeah, so it's, you know, right now you just you go through whatever local internet provider you access to get online, and you've got equal access to wherever you want to search and go to, you can get there. But with the attempt to change the net neutrality rules, you know, you could go on, go to Google to try and find someplace, and Google might decide that, oh, that link that you're trying to get to, we don't like them, and we want to.
Oh, so they could, I see.
They could place roadblocks to that access to that content that you're trying to access, and that's just part of the issues involved in the net neutrality rules.
So in a way, they would be editing what you'd have available
That's
to
right.
you. I mean, what do you call that, where you selectively give people news and?
Yeah. So you know, it's you know,
Should people be involved in asking about that? I mean, I just have heard a little bit and I didn't understand it. Is it something that we're going to vote on, or is
It's something that the FCC is just basically deciding that they want to change those existing rules that they're in, and
should we be calling our congressman
Yeah.
and senator and saying,
Definitely.
whoa, wait a minute, we all should be able to share the waves.
That's right. Yeah, definitely.
And not just force people to stay on one current.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, as citizens, we all have a responsibility to pay attention to those issues that we care about, and to let our representatives know how we care about those issues, because it's going to, otherwise, you know, you're leaving it to the representatives that we all vote for to make decisions that if you disagree with and you didn't make your voice known, then you really don't have much of a right to complain about the end result.
Boy, that's so important what you just said. I have that phone number for your congressman and your senator, and I think it's so important, 202-225-3121. What's important about what he just said is that you may not have time to go to your senator's office and carry a sign.
No.
You may not have time really to sit down and type an email. But boy, you could call 202 888-225-3121 and express an opinion. You don't have to have an opinion about everything that's happening, but pick one thing that matters to you and contact your congressman or your senator and tell them how you feel, because even if you don't talk to them directly, it goes into the statistics that you called and you said, I'm against this tax break. You know, everybody, we live here and we get misinformation. You know, I get frustrated when I get in discussions with people, and I really believe we need to get our news from more than one source.
Yes.
Some people, you know, I go to Fox or some of these other news, and I understand why people think the way they do because of what they've been told. But if you get your news from more than one source, you get a more balanced explanation about what's happening. Please get your news from more than one source. ABC, NBC, CBS, RT. I know people don't like because it's Russian Times, but they actually have journalists in Washington and in New York. So RT has some interesting stories. I don't always agree with them. Link TV, free speech. We do have local Southern Oregon, what is it, public television is different because it's nationally syndicated shows. Now I love that because it has Amy Goodwin and I can watch that news, Democracy Now! But I just want to invite people to get involved. And it's so important to just make a phone call if you can't do anything else. And be a tourist in your own town. Go out and do something that you haven't done in years. Take your kids, leave the phones in the car and take a walk. Okay, thanks for joining me. I'm Therese Swenson. My show is called Tough Times. And I like to encourage you. Oh, the one thing I want to remind you, get the air in your tires checked. It's so important. The wear of the tire, how your car handles, and it'll save you money on wasting time, tread. But it's so important to check the air in your tires this time of year. If you're somebody that changes your own oil, it's not getting done. Anyway, it'll help you be safer. And see you later, Therese Swenson checking out. Look for me Mondays at 7:30 and Saturday at noon. Thank you.
To build a better future.